What's up? How's everyone doing? We're late, but we're live, and that's okay. And my headphones seem real quiet on my end. There we go. I just had to boost them up a little bit. Hey, I'm Matt with sowcincy. Welcome to the Monday night live stream. We're a little late. I had a meeting that ran over a little late, but that's okay. We're here. We're going to be in Romans chapter 4 tonight. We're going to be going through that. A lot of observations because Romans is a deep chapter. It is. It's a very, 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 very deep chapter. Or not chapter. It's just a deep book. Romans 4 is a deep book. And when you're going through a deep book, there's so much. Like I could do this stream over and over and over again and pull out different things each time just because of how Romans is. I mean, there's just such stuff. But we're going to go ahead and jump right into it because we're excited. We're excited for Romans 4. So let's go ahead and get right into it. This is titled The Faith of Abraham. That's how some of these translations they'll not rewrite, but they'll put their little kind of like, if I was to give this a subheading, it would be about this. That's what they call it. So they call it the faith of Abraham. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So Abraham was, humanly speaking, the founder of our Jewish nation. What did he discover about being made right with God? If his good deeds had made him acceptable to God, he would have had something to boast about. But that was not God's way. For the scriptures tell us Abraham believed God, and God counted him as righteous because of his faith. When people work, their wages are not a gift, but something they have earned. But people are counted as righteous not because of their work, but because of their faith in God who forgives sinners. Now, when you think of something like this, okay, you're working a job and you're making $100,000 a year. That's a lot of money. And people boast about making 6 figures, 7 figures. I did a deal that was worth $2.8 million. In our neighborhood, they're making a big deal out of it because the one organization got this big grant that was $20 million. Big, huge thing, right? Because when you work, you're earning something, and so you have something to boast about. But what we're finding here is that that's not how God set it up. What does it say right there in verse 2 and 3? If his good deeds had made him acceptable to God, he would have had something to boast about. And so people give awards. Man of the year, woman of the year, business of the year. Because of the hard work that they do, they get it. But that's not God's way. Verse 3. For the scriptures tell us Abraham believed God, and God counted him as righteous because of his faith. Like, it would be cool if you could show up to work and tell your boss, I believe you. Well done. Well done, worker. I'm counting you as righteous. Here's your paycheck that you were supposed to work for, but now you don't. But that's not how it is. And with God, you're not earning it. Verse 4, when people work, their wages are not a gift, but something they have earned. But people are counted as righteous, not because of their work, but because of their faith in God who forgives sinners. David also spoke of this when he described the happiness of those who are declared righteous without working for it. Oh, what joy for those whose disobedience is forgiven, whose sins are put out of sight, yet what joy for those whose record the Lord has cleared of sin. There's one way that people look at there's one way that people look at unearned righteousness, or what we call grace. It is a gift you cannot earn. One way that you can look at grace, this unearned righteousness, is that you accept it with complete joy because You know how dirty, filthy, awful, gross, and ugly you are. If people knew who you were and how you acted and the thoughts you had and the way you spoke when no one was around and the intrusive thoughts, if people really knew how you were, they'd run for the hills. And yet God, in his infinite glory and goodness and righteousness and mercy, knows these things and counts them as righteous because of their faith. As David said, oh, what joy for those whose disobedience is forgiven, whose sins are put out of sight. Yes, what joy for those whose record the Lord has cleared of sin. I did some time in seminary. I was there for about a semester and a fourth, not even a half, semester and a quarter. And I had to write a paper. And it wasn't like it wasn't a large paper. Like it wasn't like a 10-page, 12-page paper, nothing like that. This was like 3 to 5 pages. You know, normally if I take a week, I can do some research and have it. The thing is that I was also working full time, and so the time just got away from me, and so I wasn't able to put forth my best work. Like it was awful. It was some terrible work. But what the professor ended up doing was he sent out a message like maybe a day or two after the paper got submitted, and he's like, hey, email me back and tell me what grade you want for your paper. And so I emailed back. I was like, I'll take if you're just giving them out, I'll take an A. Like that's what I emailed them. Like if you're just letting people pick what they want, like I'll take an A. I know a few other people that asked for an A. Some asked for a B, but a majority of the students said in my class, because he talked about it like the next time around. A majority of them was like, I want you to give me the grade that you think I deserve. And all while like we didn't know that he was doing it like this. But I took advantage of it. I was like, hey, if you're giving out A's, give me an A. I'll take it. And he did. I ended up getting an A on the paper. No, definitely not because I earned it, but because he was giving it out. And so that's one way that when you're ugly and terrible and defeated and at the lowest, like you hear something like this unearned righteousness, and you latch on. You're like, yes, if it's free, it's for me. That's one way. Let's continue on. Now, is the blessing only for the Jews, or is it also for uncircumcised Gentiles? Well, we've been saying that Abraham was counted as righteousness by God because of his faith. But how did this happen? Was he counted as righteousness only after he was circumcised, or was it before he was circumcised? Clearly, God accepted Abraham before he was circumcised. Circumcision was a sign that Abraham already had faith and that God had already accepted him and declared him to be righteous, even before he was circumcised. So Abraham is the spiritual father of those who have faith but have not been circumcised. They are counted as righteous because of their faith. And Abraham is also the spiritual father of those who have been circumcised, but only if they have the same kind of faith Abraham had before he was circumcised. Clearly, God's promise to give the whole earth to Abraham and his descendants was based not on his obedience to God's law, but on a right relationship with God that comes by faith. If God's promise is only for those who obey the law, then faith is not necessary and the promise is pointless. For the law always brings punishment on those who try to obey it. The only way to avoid breaking the law is to have no law to break. And so what it's saying here, I'm reminded of a story from, I want to say it was Tony Evans. I want to say it was during one of his sermons. He brought up this point when talking about faith. And so he shared the story of this woman who was married to this guy, and he wanted her to do this like laundry list of chores, like clean the house, clean the house is vague, but do all the dishes, sweep up, pick up all the toys, put away the clothes, do laundry, cook my dinner, cook my breakfast, all these things, like 10, 15, 25 things. If you do all these things, I'll give you all my love. And so the woman's like, okay. And so she does like 10, 15, 25 things. And the guy gives her love. Well, one day she misses one of them. And he's just like, you didn't do number 24, so I'm not going to give you all my love today. And so that built up a little bit of resentment. Over time, the woman would begrudgingly do it. Not because she wanted to, but she would just be begrudgingly doing these lists. And she got to a point where she was like, I don't care if I get this love or not. And so the story goes that the husband died. And so the woman then marries a new husband. And the new husband says, I'm gonna love you regardless. The woman still did the chores just out of habit, but she was doing it from a new place because, and I'm probably butchering this illustration, that's okay. Because she understood that I'm going to, quote unquote, obey these things that someone else had put on me. But I'm doing it because the person loves me, not so that I can earn love. And so that's what Paul's talking about here in this. He poses two blessings in verse 9. Now, is the blessing only for the Jews, or is it also for uncircumcised Gentiles? And he talks about Abraham being the spiritual father. And he says, Abraham was counted as righteous by God because of his faith. Clearly, God accepted Abraham, and verse 10, clearly God accepted Abraham before he was circumcised. That's the husband telling the wife, I love you regardless if you do these things. Okay? So Abraham was counted as righteous. It says circumcision was a sign that Abraham already had faith and that God had already accepted him and declared him to be righteous. So Abraham is the spiritual father of those who have faith but have not been circumcised. And, verse 12, Abraham is also the spiritual father of those who have been circumcised, but only if they have the same kind of faith Abraham had before he was circumcised. So what they're saying here is that because of the love that I'm getting, I'm going to do these things. And so the understanding, or how was I going to say it? The understanding is that it doesn't matter if they're circumcised or uncircumcised, that Abraham was counted righteous because of the faith, and through this act of circumcision, like if other people are circumcised, they're doing it because they're believing God. That's what it boils down to. So with it or without it, they're going in and counting God as true and right. That's what it's ultimately meaning to have faith. All right, let's continue on. Like I said, man, Romans is deep. Is deep. Verse 16, so the promise was received by faith. It is given as a free gift, and we are all certain to receive it whether or not we live according to the law of Moses. If we have faith like Abraham's, for Abraham is the father of all who believe. That is what the scriptures mean when God told him, I've made you the father of many nations. This happened because Abraham believed in the God who brings the dead back to life and who creates new things out of nothing, even when there was no reason for hope. Abraham kept hoping, believing that he would become the father of many nations. For God has said to him, that's how many descendants you will have. And Abraham's faith did not weaken, even though at about 100 years of age, he figured his body was as good as dead, and so was Sarah's womb. Abraham never wavered in believing God's promise. In fact, his faith grew stronger, And in this, he brought glory to God. He was fully convinced that God is able to do whatever he promises. And because of Abraham's faith, God counted him as righteous. And when God counted him as righteous, it wasn't just for Abraham's benefit, it was recorded for our benefit too, assuring us that God will also count us as righteous if we believe in him, the one who raised Jesus our Lord from the dead. He was handed over to die because of our sins, and he was raised to life to make us right with God. And that is the end of Romans chapter 4. And so one of the last things that I want to address before we hang up here is understanding the gospel found in Romans 4, verse 16. And it reads, "So the promise is received by faith. It is given as a free gift, and we are all certain to receive it, whether or not we live according to the law of Moses." Promise is received by faith. It is given as a free gift. There's nothing to earn. There's nothing to work towards. There's nothing that you have to do or prove. And that is scandalous because, like I mentioned earlier with my paper, right? I was the one that asked for an A. How joyous as it said about David. I took that A, and I remember having those conversations with other students during that time, and they were pretty what's the word I'm looking for? And I don't know if it's indignant or what it is, but I remember some of my other classmates were like really upset that they're like, I worked hard on this paper. I spent 6, 7, 8, 9 days on this paper. And I don't want you to tell me what grade I can pick. I want you to give me the grade that I earned. And they were salty. But it's just evident. It's evidence that God's righteousness is the exact same way. If you feel like you've been a good person, like your whole life, you've done everything, you've went to every church service, you went to every Bible study, you've read all the books, you've memorized verses, and that hasn't changed your heart, like you're gonna be indignant, you're gonna be upset, you're gonna be disgusted at the fact that someone can come along who was a, for lack of a better word, a scoundrel, and know that you're both getting the same, like you're both handed the same reward. Like you're both handed that it is that salvation is a free gift. And it's like when you think of like the worst people in the world, when you think of murderers, and you think of abusers, and you think of all these people, like they all have a chance to receive God's grace and God's forgiveness. They can all say, I am a sinner, and I believe and confess, I believe in my heart and confess with my mouth that Jesus is Lord. And that can upset a lot of people. But if you're a person like me, if you've been through some stuff, if you've done some awful, terrible stuff, and you've experienced grace from another like human being, that can really shape your life, and that can really, really change your life, and it impacts you, and it's just a lesson in understanding how God is, who He is, and how He works, and the goodness that He wants to give. But I've out talked my music. I'm Matt with sowcincy. Subscribe to the channel. We'll see you Wednesday for Wednesday night stream. Love you. Have a good one. Bye.